Welcome everybody to our end of the year roundtable for Gainseeker Tech Tips Live. How exciting. We're not putting up a presentation. We've got some wonderful people to talk with. I've got the honor to ask a bunch of questions to these very smart folks here and see what we can get out of them, right, for the end of the year and what's coming up for next year. And if you guys happen, I know through registration, some of you have already asked questions or put them in, and certainly appreciate that. If you want to, at the comments, I'll try to watch them as they come in. If you think of something or some of our conversations prompt a question, please go ahead and feel comfortable to ask them. I do have a bunch on my monitor that we will get to. And without further ado, I would actually like to officially introduce my wonderful panel that I have joining us today. And I'm going to start from my upper left and kind of go clockwise here. So I've got Phil Mason up above. He is our VP of Business Development. Phil, you want to say welcome and a little introduction?
Yeah, great to have you all here. You all have heard my voice. If you've been on any of these Tech Tips Lives, I'm often the host. Thanks for joining us here as we do an end of the year roundup. And Jen and I have been working on our Tech Tips Live schedule for next year, and we'll give you just a short preview of that at the end. And that will be posted here to our website shortly, so you can sign up for those for the 2022 season of Tech Tips Live.
Yay, thanks, Phil. And next we have Chris Bowman, who's been one of our deployment specialists for a very long time. Chris, you want to go ahead and introduce, say a little something about yourself?
Hello, everyone. I've been on a number of Tech Tips Live, so some of you may have heard me before. I've been to a lot of customer sites, so some of you may have met me before, as I've been doing this for going on 23 years now.
Very good. And we appreciate Chris going on 24 years with us. So thanks for joining us. And then what I have following Chris, I have Ian Harris, who is another one of our wonderful deployment specialists that some of you may have been introduced to already. But Ian, go ahead and say a couple things.
All right. Well, like Phil said, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. I have also done a few Tech Tip Lives, although not as many as Chris, and I've been to a few client sites, although not as many as Chris. I like the up-and-coming version of a Chris in this talk.
Well, we appreciate you being here with us. And then we have Byron Shetler, our president. I always like to say our head alpha geek, man in charge, behind the curtain. Byron, please welcome and say a few words about yourself, please.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to Tech Tips Live. Excited to be here. I won't say necessarily how long I've been with the company because it's really long. 30, almost 38 years.
And what is your employee ID number?
4.
Okay. All right. So that's pretty good.
64. Andy, cut me a break.
Well, awesome. Thank you, everybody, for those warming introductions. And so I'm going to get right to the point. Again, if we have questions in the meantime, feel free to bring those out. So I'm going to start with our CSD members, Chris, Ian. What is the most interesting project you have worked on this year, whether it be remote or on site? I'll let you guys fight who wants to answer that first.
Well, I'll go ahead and do that. This project wasn't started on this year, but we did work on it a bit this year, and it's a project that involves reading data coming in from a furnace. In fact, several furnaces, and basically what it does is as the furnace goes through a process, it records data from a bunch of different sensors and then does some analysis and source in Gainseeker. And The reason I really like it is because it's almost entirely automated. So we started running a little program on a computer, and it just runs, and it scans these sensors and waits for a certain set of conditions to be true. Then it automatically starts recording, and when it's done, when the oven is finished doing what it's supposed to do, it turns off, and it just waits for the next one. It'll restart it itself if there's a problem, and like I said, it does a little bit of analysis before it even goes into the system, so people can just pull that up immediately, and it like takes a lot of work off of people's plates, because I can't imagine how much time it would take somebody to go in and like transcribe all of this data into an Excel sheet or something manually. So basically, no one has to deal with it, and that's kind of awesome because it seems to just work.
Right. And with protecting some of our personal client information, I'm curious, was this like a very first project for a customer, or was this just another one? They're like, hey, we're using GainSeeker. Can GainSeeker do this? And it kind of just developed that way.
Yeah, it's that second one. This was not the first project with them.
Okay. Awesome. So we're starting to think.
I've got a question for follow-up for Ian on that. So then are they displaying some of that information like on a dashboard, or they have some kind of a display for the operators then?
Not for the operators, although the display is available to them, but it is being used by the supervisors. So the supervisors can not only sit in an office that's separate from where the furnaces are and see what they're doing, but they can also, like what they have been doing in the past, but they can also just hook directly into the OPC stuff, and we have that running out in a dashboard too. So
Okay.
they can just, refresh it and see this is immediately what it looks like right now.
So there's kind of two things. Obviously, operators, less time, more streamlined for them, but we've also increased data visibility, made it more real time in that situation then too for that client.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome. All right, Chris, you're up next. Same question.
Okay. Well, my most interesting project was, in some respects, it was a little similar, but the entire goal was to create a dashboard of actionable data. And the project itself involved collecting data from a large number of different sources, some of which was new that had to be brought into GainSeeker that hadn't been previously, but also integrating with their ERP system to identify exactly what product they were currently running and what were some of the optimal settings that that product should be running at. And it would display a dashboard that would say, okay, what you are currently running at this speed, our optimum speed is that, and it would turn red if the current speed was below the optimum speed. Now, this involved a lot of calculations of values that were not necessarily immediately available, because and we're actually changing throughout the hour, because some of the metrics were like their throughput per hour. So all through the hour, that was being constantly changed. So these were all parameters that were being calculated by other parameters that we pulled in the GainSeeker. And so it displayed a nice dashboard for the supervisors that were managing the day-to-day operation on the line. And it actually turned on a couple warning lights that could have either just a red or a green status, or a red, yellow, and green status. So the customer has reported that it's going to pay off for itself in a very short amount of time by having the operators and the supervisors to have that actionable data at their fingertips when they're making decisions on how to maintain and keep the line running in optimum mode.
Well, that's awesome. That's pretty exciting. Sometimes it makes me feel like I want to be a technician again, so I can go do all this good stuff. But I'm just kidding. I'm over it. With that being said,
Thoroughly gone to the dark side.
Yeah, not the dark side, just the other side. Just right. I'm starting to call development the dark side now, right? It's not sales anymore. It's now development. Speaking of, let me throw some questions over to Phil and Byron here. Give our CSD members a break for a second. They did such a great job. So I'm sure we all want to know, what are things on the horizon for Hertzler Systems and GainSeeker specifically? What do we got going on here? Either one.
Go ahead,
I'd be-
Phil.
You know, it's a big, broad question, and I think one of the things that we really have focused on the last couple of years and continue to focus on is how we can directly partner with our clients, with our users. And if you look at the things that we've added to GainSeeker the last couple of versions, and the things that we are doing with things like with Jen and Jenny Lee and technical project management, and working with our implementation specialists, you know, we're really working hard to work with clients, partner with them so that, you know, whatever platform it is that you're wanting to work on, you've got still the pure on-prem, you're running some kind of a hybrid platform, or some of our clients have shifted to a completely hosted cloud type of an arrangement for GainSeeker. We're just really working hard to make that partnership work for everybody and to provide as many services so that you all get the value and get the return out of it. And so I think we're hyper focused on helping our clients get the value they want and need out of the software. And I think we also then, with that, are really doing some good things in terms of just creativity and helping people see the possibilities. I know, Jen, you were at a client's a long-time client's location end of last week, and you just had a chance to show them a lot of things. They were behind a couple of versions, and I know that happens, but you're able to show them some of the new things we're doing and open their eyes to the possibilities. And so, you know, those of you on this call today, or maybe watching the recording later on, be open to the possibilities. GainSeeker is just a very powerful tool, and our field folks can really make it sing. So that's all. I'll stop there and let Byron.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, I'd echo what Phil was saying, and to extend that a little bit, you know, some of the technologies that we're looking at, the IIoT, industrial IoT, and connecting to sensors, that sort of thing. Edge devices, looking at what does it take to, as people are moving to the cloud, what does it take to get local processing of data and possibly do some analysis local before shipping data up to the cloud, and maybe even minimizing the amount being sent to the cloud, or the other side of the edge device is to give some more real-time feedback. You know, if you've got information being stored, just to be able to get more responsive feedback with that. And along with that, you know, there's like 5G is becoming more prevalent in many areas, and obviously with like a self-driving car, you want high-speed response. 5G will handle large volumes of data and is more responsive than the 4G. So to get faster feedback, that sort of thing. And then finally, blockchain. You know, often blockchain is kind of a cool technology looking for an application, but there are some traceability applications with that. You know, whether it's vegetables, medical devices. We have one customer that's using some recycled plastic mixed in with their virgin plastic, and some of their customers that they're supplying want to know, you know, where did that plastic come from? Is it a Gatorade lid, or was it like storing a plastic container that was storing oil beforehand? And that's pretty important for them to know that. So, you know, there's some cool technologies out there. We're trying to figure out in many ways how does GainSeeker work with those technologies.
Thanks, Byron. Kind of going on that, what are some of the trends on the shop floor software tools? And I'll even not just extend it, I'll extend it to all our panel, really. What have we been seeing lately?
One thing I've noticed that's really getting a lot of uptake in terms of out on the shop floor is using the data canvas that was released. I think 9.3, and then 9.4 we added defect lists, pass fails, checkboxes, along with numeric inputs that was in the original release. And that gives operators visualization of what they're supposed to be doing. So if you've got a lot of turnover, new operators, having the operators be able to visualize and kind of see what they're supposed to be doing and step them through that inspection process seems to be a real big plus.
I would just add, I think one of the interesting things right now in the overall marketplace and in software for businesses is there's an interesting bifurcation of systems between kind of large enterprise systems that are IT driven, really big footprint, and many of them are even pushing to the cloud. You've got your ERP and things like that, and it's a months-long process and years-long in some cases, and touches every part of the business. But then we also have in the whole cloud environment a world of smaller, lighter, very kind of small apps that are tuned to a specific task, and people are able to sometimes obtain those and access those without IT's really involvement too. And so there is some uncertainty in the field and kind of in the whole realm of manufacturing of, okay, if we have this big system, can the little system deal with it? Do we let people do little systems? You know, how capable should the little system be? Should the little system just do one specific thing and do it fantastic, or should we do some other things? So I think that is going to continue to evolve. We're going to see the maturation of APIs in manufacturing. So those IoT devices Byron mentioned, we're going to have some smarter APIs to connect those into systems like ours. And there's going to be a lot of changes in the next couple of years as companies continue to get more and more digital and people understand better what some of the possibilities are to really both be kind of on the surface but also very deep into systems both on a premise or in the cloud as well.
And Phil, I might mention on that, you know, a couple of the clients that I have gone and seen lately, you know, we all share the same struggle with hiring and the turnover rate. And I was quite surprised to see how they're going more automation, more AI. I mean, they have now cells that basically with even lights showing you need to pick up this part out of this bin, and it's like, okay, green, now do the next thing and the next thing. And, you know, they're saying, well, can you interact with that database when you have that torque tool and it says it's fine? Can you go behind the scenes? Because we don't want our operators to have to do that. And I'm like, you know, as long as it's a database and we have logic, we can connect to it. But I'm definitely seeing a lot more automation and AI integration coming up as well.
Yeah.
One thing I've seen is customers wanting a lot of more information attached to the data, what we typically call traceability information. You know, we're getting a number of customers that are pushing the current limit of traceability fields because they want to be able to ask more questions of the data after it's been collected. On the other hand, that has pushed them to more integration, pulling information from ERPs and other systems, because you don't want the operators to be spending all of their time entering, you know, 30 different traceability values to go along with that one data point that they're measuring. So that's something I've been noticing in the last year or two.
Thanks, Chris. Hey, and on that note, one of the questions I was going to ask specifically Chris and Ian is, you know, what are some words of wisdom or maybe questions that you normally ask a client when you're getting ready to do a project or preparing so they can get ready? Chris, I know we've talked a couple times and there's some standard questions you always ask.
Yeah, and this does get back to that. It is, you know, one of my standard questions is, what are you going to be using this data for? Or what questions are you going to be asking of the database after we've set it up and you've got data in it, because that will often lead me to what traceability information you need to attach to the database. Okay, so that's really a big question, is what are you going to do with this data? How is this data going to help you? Okay, and there's actually been a couple times where people decided maybe there was some data they were planning to collect that they didn't need to because they couldn't think of how they were going to use it. There's no real value in spending money to collect data that doesn't then turn around and help you. So how are you going to use this data? What questions are you going to be asking? Those are words that I say almost on every single project. Questions I ask on almost every single project.
Thanks, Chris. Ian, do you have words of wisdom you usually give your clients, or standard questions that you kind of ask?
I mean, I usually have very little wisdom myself, but
Stop it.
It's sort of adjacent to what Chris is asking. It's something that I've started asking. It's just slightly broader, which is, what do you want to use GainSeeker for in general? And it's not really that pointed, but I started asking it because I've realized that, obviously, in retrospect, very often the people who decide to implement GainSeeker aren't the people I'm working with directly. So they'll come into it thinking, oh, it's a quality program, but I don't know what that means to them. So I want to find out, what do they think a quality program does? Like, what do they think GainSeeker is for? And I've started asking that mostly because I've discovered that when I show people things in GainSeeker, you know, here's the inspection that's been set up, and here's how you can pull this data. Almost every time they say something like, oh, I didn't know it could do that. I didn't know it could do that kind of deep analysis. I didn't know you could show Pareto charts, which was an interesting one. So I like to get a baseline just so that we can, you know, be working towards the same goals.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Hey, Jen, if I could piggyback on Chris's a little bit.
Absolutely.
I spent 2 days in November doing some advanced training with a group of 14 people from a customer that had been collecting data a little over a year, and we ran through the grouping data, some of the wizards like the variation wizard, some of the big data widgets, and we had engineers, production people, and even finance, accounting people in there. And it was a real eye-opener for all three groups in terms of the data we had in there and what they could do with it. You know, whether it was costing, figuring out which parts are profitable or not, or which machines had the better OEE numbers, that sort of thing. So it was a real eye-opener to go back, you know, a year later where they had a lot of data now, and to kind of step through that data and just do some discovery and run some exercises of what is this data telling you? What, you know, making them aware of what they really have. It's a huge resource, valuable resource, and making them aware of what they had.
So Byron, with that client, I would say my assumption would be they're a little bit unusual because you had all those different groups in that training session. Why do you think, you know, why is accounting there? We don't always see that. You know, we're sometimes just dealing with maybe some quality folks and some production, some quality engineering. How do you think they got buy-in from a bigger group? Where did that start at that particular company?
Well, with that company, they're tracking whether products are profitable or not based on how much labor's being used to make the product, what the waste, scrap, rework, all that is. There's like 6 different components of that. And so they're applying real dollars every day. So OEE isn't just a percentage, it's a dollar, and that happens every day, every shift. They know how much money they're making or losing over what they estimated they should be running at, the standards that they have. So in that sense, accounting is getting dollar values every day of how each shift is doing compared to what their targets are.
They even know, I think I've heard you say they even know what they sold the product for too, right? Like what income they're expecting to get from these things that they're making. Yeah, that's, you know, that kind of gets back to what Ian said of, this isn't just a quality system. In this case, here's a client who's extended it far beyond that.
Awesome. Thanks for taking us that deep dive, Byron. Hey, on that, since we're kind of pointing at you, I was just curious, and in case people don't know, our customers are allowed to request items or features that we don't have, right? And we document them all. We have a list, and as we have new versions, most of us, we get the joy of telling our customers, hey, we're putting your enhancement in this new version. I know that's one of the things I used to love to tell our customers. With that in mind, what is probably the most requested thing this past year, item, resource, service, that has been requested of GainSeeker?
Yeah, I think the one big one is access to BI tools, whether it's ClickView or Tableau or Power BI, and Power BI seems to be the big one. Getting a lot of requests. Can we send our data to Power BI? In the past, last 10, 15 years, you've been able to right click and say send to on a data table or a chart and send it to Excel or Minitab or what have you. But now some of the more high-end tools like a Power BI are being requested. And so we're going to definitely have that in 9.5. We might try to sneak it out in like a 9.4.2 before then. But that's definitely high on the list to be able to send the data out to a BI tool like that.
Awesome. I'm glad I asked that question. Thanks. Phil, going to you. The business world, we've had so many disruptions in the last 2 years, really. What do you think that means for us, or what does that mean for future scheduling?
Yeah, well, it's Hertzler Systems. First off, we have had a couple really strong years. We're feeling pretty good about where our business is at, and that's obviously thanks to our clients and what they have been able to do, the value they see in the GainSeeker software and our partnership with them. So that remains strong. Part of our ongoing challenge with, as everybody, I think, is getting enough people, having enough people at our clients to help them keep things implemented and moving forward. And so, we're busy. We're scheduling things out here. Always the end of the year kind of has some rush of orders and things like that. And so our winter into spring, things are looking pretty busy. And if you have projects you'd like us to do for you, you better be getting the order in, because we don't put it on the books until we get an order. And but those are good problems to have. And the other thing is Hertzler Systems we have been working remote, as you can see from our video here, and we actually are moving our offices. We're downsizing our space a little bit. We're moving into some space in downtown Goshen, Indiana, which any of you who've been here knows it's a great, lively downtown. We're all looking forward to having coffee shops close by and some restaurants and things like that. But we expect to be a somewhat remote company in the future. We will always have a hub, of course, but a lot of us will continue to work in a hybrid kind of environment, and some people will be remote almost all the time. So we also see that as a reality in our whole business world. We won't be traveling quite as much to client sites. We'll be doing more work remotely or more hybrid kinds of things. So it's a shift, it's a change, and I feel really good about how we have adjusted to that, and our clients as well. It hasn't caused, there have been challenges, but it has not caused a huge amount of disruptions for us.
Thanks, Phil. I know I certainly appreciate it when some of our clients, especially when it's cold here, and they're like, no, come on site. I'm like, okay, I'm right there. No problem. But it's nice when you can't, or there's other things going on, to be able to have resources like Teams and being able to meet this way. Talking about services, I want to go back to our technicians here and think about either a Tech Tips Live you've done this year, or really just a resource or something about GainSeeker, a takeaway that you think is important for our customers to know. Either something that we kind of overlook and say, hey, this is really something we should take notice of. Like I said, whether it's a wizard or something in GainSeeker, something automated. What comes to mind in thinking this past year? And hey, if there's one thing I could tell my clients that's usually overlooked, what is it? A good resource. Chris, I'll throw you under the bus first.
Well, for me, that's pretty clear. One of the constant questions I get from customers is, can you calculate this stat? Can you give me that stat? And one of the things that they added a few versions back is the ability to create in GainSeeker custom statistics. So even if it's not one that we directly calculate, we can often handle that through a custom statistic. And going back to this project I was describing earlier, where we talked about creating actionable data and comparing, where they're running now as opposed to where they should be running or what their optimum setting is, a lot of that is done with custom statistics, because it's not like a fixed number. It's not like they're always trying to run their line at speed X. Well, it should be speed X if they're running product A, but it needs to be speed Y if they're running product B. So the system I set up is actually storing the target speed in a trace field, and a custom stat is comparing the actual calculated speed to the calculated target speed, because it actually is changing all the time, particularly as they change products during the hour. So there's been an enormous amount of things that I've been able to do recently with the custom statistics that I think not everybody is aware of. And anything that you would be calculating from other stats in GainSeeker is particularly easy, because when you're doing in the interface where you build the custom statistics, you have access to every statistic that's being calculated by GainSeeker. So custom statistics are something that I'd like to call people's attention to.
Thanks, Chris. That's definitely a good resource. And if you're not really thinking of it, you totally forget it. Ian, I'll point to you next.
Well, one of the things that custom stats are good for is, they're basically just bits of code that run. So I think that part of what makes them very popular, or not popular, but powerful, is that you can basically have them do whatever. So there are some people who use them to show the current status of, say, a machine that's running, if that machine status is being stored in an external database somehow, or if it's information that's being sent with an OPC server. You can actually use a custom stat to just talk to that and then send the response back. The thing that I think the one that I remember doing this year was about V2 as far as Tech Tip Lives go, and our lift and shift thing. And I liked doing that because there's this interesting sort of interplay between like the desire to take advantage of the fact that you can use computers as a resource, as a utility, and company security, because lots of companies have some very private information that they want to make sure stays private, but they also would like to not pay a whole bunch of money for something they could be getting for relatively cheap. And so we did a whole Tech Tips Live about like, well, if you're currently on-prem and you want to move partially over to the cloud while you're sort of building up your own cloud system, here's how you do that. And that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I believe you helped us with that one, didn't you?
I did.
Yes, I do remember that one. That was awesome. Thank you. I'm taking a look at the time here. We have about 10 minutes left. I know we have, I have one question that I haven't mentioned yet from one of our customers. So I do want to make sure I get that out there, and that may take the rest of the time depending on any other questions that may stem from this. But it is a cloud question from one of our customers, and it is what are your future plans for moving from local client-based software to the cloud-based application? And then part 2 of that is what kind of services would be offered to transition from the on-prem to the cloud? I will first look at Byron. Phil.
Who wants to start us off? I'll start us off and just say, as we talked about, it is it is a hybrid world out there, and it's going to continue to be a hybrid world for a long time. That just goes without saying. There will be people who will continue to use on-prem. It works for them. There are people who are in a hybrid environment of doing some of the lift and shift like Ian just talked about. And then there are things in the pure cloud. We are actively in development of a pure cloud product, and it is in development. It's look for news and things in the new year. We will obviously be telling you more about that. And you know, GainSeeker's been out there for quite a number of years, and it takes a long time to kind of get a robust product completely done and in that whole cycle. And so there's even going to be some of that with our cloud. It's going to take some time to have that complete robust product to kind of get to that questioner's question there of then transition plans. And so we initially expect that some of our current clients, they'll look at the cloud and they'll be like, oh, well, there are these various things I can't do that I'm used to doing here. And that'll take a while. But we envision a time down the road where, for whatever reason, people will want to do that shift. And obviously, we will be welcoming new clients and new partners to work with us in a pure cloud environment as well, too, in the future. So I'll stop there and let Byron say anything else, add anything more he'd like to.
Well, yeah, I think you're right, Phil. In the hybrid, you know, we've got customers now doing the hosted environment, so they can offload some of the need to have their own servers and that sort of thing, where they're hosting GainSeeker within that environment. But yeah, we're working hard on the cloud product. Pretty exciting what we're doing with that in terms of next generation of database, data access. One cool thing is an RS-232 interface through the browser, which is a brand new API, just recently came out within the last year, and being able to pick a device from the browser and then start talking to that device. So we're pretty excited about that to simplify some of the inputs. We're not forgetting about the desktop GainSeeker. I mean, we've got a long list, like Jen had mentioned earlier, a long list of enhancements that are queued up for version 9.5 and already looking at what's going to go into 9.6. So that desktop GainSeeker is going to continue to be enhanced for years to come. We anticipate that it's going to be a long path forward for desktop GainSeeker as well. So yeah, we'll get a little schizophrenic or bipolar here with the two products going, but I think we'll be able to handle that all right.
Yeah, they just make sales handle it, right? Figure out what's going on. Just make sales do it. Hear it all the time. Thank you guys so much for addressing that. And, you know, I do believe Hertzler does such a great job at communication with our current customers that I think we'll be all well informed way before we need to worry about whether we want to make a decision. Do we need to make a decision and when? And, you know, just let us know if you continue to have questions with that. Speaking about questions, Chris, I believe you wanted to point out something that we talked about earlier, or make a point on with like GainSeeker and Tableau.
Yeah, I just did want to point out that while we haven't put anything into the system yet to allow us to push data to Tableau or ClickView or any of these other visualization softwares, we already have customers that are using those products with GainSeeker. They simply have to be set up to pull the information from the GainSeeker tables. If any of you have something that you'd like to do that way, we are quite willing to help you with, okay, how is the data organized in GainSeeker to allow you to visualize it in some of these other software packages. That's not something that we have any objection to doing.
Awesome. Thanks for that clarification, Chris. And just like that, we're almost out of time. I can't believe it. I could probably sit here and talk with you guys for another hour and come up with a lot of questions like, can we stump the technicians or something like that? Because I'm not in the hot seat, so that'd be totally easy for me. We've got a last few minutes, anybody have any words of wisdom, things they want to say as we're ending the new year and excited to begin the new one?
So while people are thinking about those things, or if we have any other questions that someone might have, I just want to point out, Jen, we did talk about our 2022 Tech Tips Live lineup coming up.
Yes.
And we kind of went that balance of, well, how hardcore techie should we be? How much is it? Kind of just an overview. And we decided we're going to jump in January, and it's going to be hardcore techie.
Yes.
And we're going to do 4 months of Python, 4 Tech Tips Live in a row. It's going to be the Python series.
Yeah, yes,
So,
it is. I'm glad
yep.
you mentioned that. That's my fault. I forgot. Talking about, and specifically, you know, we have gain seeker Python commands. So they're pseudo, they're shortcuts, if you will. So we'll start with anything that has to do with inspections in Python, and then sub-inspections, and then the individual tests or the components, which are, you know, traceability, numeric inputs, you know, DMS records, things of that. And then the fourth week or the fourth month would be the integration capabilities with that. So we're going down that techie path. Fear not. I would think whether you think you're that techie or inclined or not, please join. It's really not going to be that bad. Maybe the fourth month will probably be the most intense, but we can get through it. And then we'll kind of dial it back a little bit. And Phil, I think we're going to put the first 4 months or first 6 months on our website here shortly.
Yeah.
So you guys will be able to see and make sure that you register early.
So our company 40th anniversary is in June. So Ian volunteered to show people how to format a floppy disk. Part of the Tech Tips Live.
It's going to be glorious.
Now, if he can actually still has the hardware to do that, that's impressive.
You are talking about the 5 1/4 inch floppy disk, are you not?
Yeah. Well.
Oh yes, you're right, Andy. Cassette tapes. I recall cassette tapes in high school on our Tandy TRS-80 computers.
Oh, you got me beat. I was Apple IIe. But programming that brick to fall down the screen, I mean, that's priceless.
Oh yes.
Now that we've impressed everyone with how geekish we are.
Yes, for sure.
Anyway, I will close this up again. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you for helping give Hertzler and Gainseeker a great year. We're so looking forward to next year. Looking forward to keeping our technicians like Chris and Ian extremely, extremely busy so they can't get into trouble. And so far, so good on that. I think we're even going to let Ian go out on the West Coast here in the next few months. So that I'll be a little jealous, but we'll see. We'll see about that. Anyway,
I'm going to enjoy the weather so much.
There you go. I am trying to get out there too. Different customer, but trying to get out that way myself. Anyway, thanks everybody. We will have a Tech Tips Live in January. Third week. We're not switching the times or anything, right?
No,
Still
third Thursday.
Third Thursday, 2 o'clock Eastern. And everybody have a wonderful holiday and Happy New Year.
Yep. Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.